Pastor Hans is with us tonight. We originally had Men's Teen Challenge. The only consolation I have is that Pastor Hans worked with Men's Teen Challenge for some time, so this is really appropriate. It's just great.
Yeah, exactly. Well, good evening, everybody. How are you? Good. And hey, real quick, if you can do me a favor, get your phones out if you would. And once you've done that, open up your texting or your messaging app, and I want you to text me an irrational fear you have. Now, with that next slide up, there's my number. Do not abuse the number. Do not send me crazy things. I want you just text me an irrational fear you have. I'm just going to share a couple of mine. I hate snakes. If I see them and they're 3 inches long, I kill them. I know I'm terrible. I'm a bad human. I understand. I hate snakes. So I just don't like them. I don't like heights. And I had this strange, when I was a kid, I had one of my teeth knocked out playing baseball. And so I always have this fear about something hitting me in the mouth and knocking out my tooth again. I know it's an irrational fear. Doesn't make sense, but that's a fear I have. So I want you to just, to that cell phone, I want you to text me an irrational fear. And I've got a bunch coming up. Some of you, I actually have you in my phone. I know your name. I won't call out your names. And, but we've got a bunch of them here. I love this. This is great. Oh, man, I got a lot of dirt on you guys now. And we have, my phone's blowing up. Let me shut off the ringer here. That would probably work out better. We've got spiders, okay? We've got other things I can't read that I won't read. Terrified of needles, public speaking, doing what you're doing tonight, and sharks. You know, sharks, a big fear. Balloons popping, and that's not Holly. Anyways, any bird. If I see a bird, I'm afraid. Snakes, centipedes. Okay, I've never known anybody be afraid of centipedes. Okay, not any bug, centipedes. More spiders. Sharks that might get me in the dark in a swimming pool. So if you're swimming at night in the pool, that there's a shark in there. I know there is at some point, in some way. And I have somebody send me an image. Oh my gosh, yeah, that is bad. And there's some other things here. More sharks, stink bugs. Driving, having stitches removed. I'm afraid I'll drive off the side of a road, side of a bridge, looking at the water. Like I'm looking at the water as I'm driving, and I'll just drive and just drive off the bridge. Blood and closed spaces and flying. Those are some things that people are afraid of. And you know, tonight and in the weeks to come, I know I'm kind of out of my lane here. I got to get up here where the light is. But I understand that a lot of us have fears, and some of them irrational. But I want to talk to you tonight and the next couple Sunday nights about how to be brave. And I've always thought, I love to be brave, and I'm excited about talking about it because I really do enjoy being brave. I think I feel most like God, like my Father, when I'm brave. And I'm really excited because I want you to be able to be brave. And I'm going to define bravery here. It's having or showing mental or moral strength in the face of danger, fear, or difficulty. How to be brave. And the funny thing about being brave is most of the time to someone else, like someone else could look at that list I read of your fears and say, that's not a big deal. I know there's no sharks in swimming pools. I know that you're not going to get your tooth knocked out again, but just, you know, I understand that fear, but it's probably not going to happen. I mean, all these other things, and I know that you can look at these things in other people's lives, and oftentimes you say, well, that's not really something you have to be brave about, but to you or to me, it's having to be brave. Maybe it's going to the dentist. Maybe it's public speaking. Maybe it's meeting people. Maybe it's an overwhelming big project. Maybe it's crowds. It's medical tests. It's new places. It's resolving conflict. But in the end, for you to face it, you've got to be brave. And Paul wrote about being brave, and I would say it's interesting that he wrote about being brave while in prison. And he was kind of an expert. I don't know if you'd say that. If you can write about bravery while you're serving time, you're kind of an expert there. He was actually in prison at least 3 times, in Rome, Ephesus, and Caesarea. We're not sure which one he's in right here. But he writes Philippians chapter 4, verse 6 and 7. And he says this, Philippians 4, verse 6 and 7. He says, "Do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation by prayer and petition with thanksgiving, present your requests to God. And the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus." Now there's a Greek word here that Paul uses for anxious, and it's merimnate, and it literally means to be pulled apart by worry. To be pulled apart by worry. And it's not just a genuine concern, like you're concerned about maybe the future in your career, your occupation, and so you're taking extra courses to make sure that you're ready for any changes. Or, you're concerned that this is happening in life, so you kind of get ahead of it and you're giving it some attention and focus. That's not what we're talking about. That's not what Paul's talking about. He's actually talking about being pulled apart. There's, in other words, being torn apart by worry. And I want to ask you this question: if there's something in your life that pulls you apart with worry, that literally tears at who you are with worry. And if there is, then God has some answers for your and my anxiety. And according to that passage, there are 3 things we can do to be brave. 3 things we can do to be brave. And again, we're going to be talking about being brave. But number one, believe God. Believe God. Philippians 4:6, don't be anxious about anything. Isn't it always easier to be the person saying, hey, don't worry about that. I've been through that. Oh yeah, I've been down that road. It's going to be okay. It's always easier to be that person than the one who's having to face whatever it is. See, some people in life you can believe, and others you just can't. It's like those people that love amusement park rides. How many of you here love amusement park rides? That's kind of your thing, right here. You're like, the scarier the ride, the faster, the more turns, the longer I stay upside down. That is okay. That is your absolute favorite thing. And those people always tend to say this when they get off the ride. It's actually, you need to go on. It's not too bad. It's not that bad, right? That's what they always say to convince you to come on. I've always been that person that when it comes to amusement park rides has been less of a risk taker. And so you kind of, I was that person like, well, I might go on. When I was younger, I might go on. And that would be always the argument. It's not that bad. It's okay. Don't worry about it. It's fine. It happens real quick, and then it's over, and everything's good. You just can't trust those people because what they're saying is not true. It's worse than they say. It takes longer than they say, but there are other people that you can trust in life. And Paul says it here. He says, do not be anxious about anything. See, Paul has been through it. He's been blinded he didn't know how long he was going to be blinded by. He's had a massive, massive career, moral, theological change in life. He went from being a Pharisee of all Pharisees to an apostle. And so he's gone through massive changes. He's been nearly stoned to death, or at least they thought he was dead. He's been jailed. He's been beaten. He's been lied about. He's had an uncertain future. You can believe when he says, hey, do not be anxious about anything. See, he has kind of like a large pool to draw from when the things that you could actually be anxious concerning. And how did Paul know this was true? Well, he writes in Romans chapter 8, 31 and 32, He says, what shall we say about wonderful things as these? If God is for us, who can ever be against us? Since he did not spare even his own son, but gave him up for us all, won't he also give us everything else? There's two phrases here. If God is for us, it's kind of a rhetorical question. The answer, of course, to this question is, if God is for us, who can be against us? The answer is, well, no one of any significance, of course, because it's comparing God against what this world has to offer. Another part says, since he did not spare even his own son, but he put all his chips on the table. He literally gave it all he had. Have you ever thought about a job or something else in life that you actually gave your all to, where you had absolutely nothing left? Maybe it was a race you ran. Maybe it was a game you played in. Maybe it was a project you worked on. Maybe it was a marriage you were trying to save, and you literally gave it your all. See, we intuitively very much, we know when we've given something our all. We know what it feels like. We know there's nothing left. And Jesus literally gave it all when he gave his own life for us. It's like Pastor Brian. He's getting married next Sunday. Give him a hand, will you? Give him a hand. He's getting married this time next Sunday. All the planning, all that stuff it's wonderful in some parts, and some parts it's just like, oh my gosh. But he's married, and so he's going from saying, I love you and I want to commit my life to loving you and all these wonderful things, and then he's actually gonna do it. Like he's just, forget all the talk. Today's gonna happen. I'm doing it. And that's what Jesus did. He gave it all so we can believe him. The reason we're able to not allow things to tear us apart with worry is because we can believe him. No matter what it looks like, no matter what it feels like, we believe him. Not that everything's going to turn out exactly as we want it to, but that his peace will be there for us as we're brave. And the second way we can be brave is by asking God. Asking God. Philippians chapter 4, the second part of verse 6 says, present your requests to God. I had a physiology anatomy teacher in high school, and he was actually a Christian, and he was just a great guy. His name was Al Horkey, and he was one of those teachers that during the school year he taught, but he was actually a licensed plumber, and so he would do plumbing, Saturdays and some weeknights, and then all summer, that's what he'd do. And he believed in working. He loved to work. And so I remember meeting him and him asking me, hey, what kind of job do you have? I think I had a paper route or something like that. And he said, I've got a lawn mowing job for you. And so I would mow his lawn because he was doing everything else. He couldn't mow his lawn. And I remember one time one of the first times he asked me to come mow his lawn. And, I mowed the lawn and everything, and I was looking for a weed whacker, a trimmer. I couldn't find it anywhere, and I found one, and just in a quick look, I was young, I was probably 14. I couldn't find any gas because I knew at least I couldn't put regular gas in it. And I'm looking around, I can't find it anywhere. And so I did find one of those hand trimmers, the ones that look like big scissors, and you do this. So I literally got on my knees because I knew I had to trim around his fence and went all the way around his fence. And it took me absolutely forever. He gets back and he's like, man, why are you still here? I said, I just finished mowing. He's like, well, what did you do? Did you cut it by hand? I said, well, part of it I did. He said, well, tell me what happened. I said, well, I couldn't find any gas for the trimmer, so I just took these and I just cut around. And he started laughing. He's like, my wife was inside, right? And I said, yeah, Miss Horkey, she's in there. She knew where everything. Why didn't you ask? I'm like, well, I don't know. I just found this and I didn't see any gas. And if I had asked, I would have been out there an hour before. Sometimes we don't ask. When it comes to being brave, we often overlook the most simple things, like asking God. God, I don't feel brave. I don't know what to do. I want to run from this. I want to avoid it, whatever it might be. Well, one of the ways that we can be brave is not only believing God, but asking him. Paul says when we can ask him, every situation. Every situation. Exams, ask God. Work project deadlines, ask God. Conflict in your family, ask God. How to appropriately discipline your children, ask God. An unexpected bill in the mail, ask God. Facing addiction, ask God. Nothing is too small or too big to ask God about. See, in life, we often learn when we're asking certain people that there are good times to ask and not good times. You know what I'm talking about? You know, there are some people in your life, they know to ask you things at certain times because maybe you're distracted. If I ask him then he won't really think about what I'm doing, and he'll just say, oh, yeah, that's fine. You know, daughters are really good at that. I've discovered after 3 of them, you know, they know when to ask you. Or if you're hungry, don't ask that person when they're hungry. You know, don't ask that person when they're tired, you know. But the thing is with God, we don't have to worry about him being tired or hungry or distracted or whatever it might be, because we can ask him in every situation. How should we ask him? With thanksgiving, present your requests to God. Why thanksgiving? Well, why is God instructing you and I to ask him with thanksgiving? Why is that? Because when I'm thankful, it helps me communicate. It helps me to talk to him with the right heart. Thankfulness helps me recognize God's work on my behalf now and in the future. If you want to be brave, and I truly believe that this is a very important time for you to be brave as a follower of Christ. It's a very important time for people to be brave. I mean, you don't have to look like the lion guy. Oh, I think that's a really cool image, actually. But to be brave is so vital, so critical. In order to be brave, we need to be able to be people that believe God. We need to be able to be people that ask God. But we also need to be people that experience God, experience him. Philippians chapter 4, the last part of 6 and the first part of 7 says, but in every situation, he says, in the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, in every situation. See, being brave isn't like a one-time thing. It's not like when I took my ordination test, it was a one-time shot. I don't have to take it every year. I don't have to go back. Maybe in your occupation, there's a test you took, and you take it one time, and that's it. Bravery is not like that, is it? Bravery is something that you actually have to be oftentimes. Maybe in the same week, multiple times in the same day. And it kind of can creep up on you, those opportunities to be brave. And so it really does, it is something that comes again and again and again in life. John Wooden, the legendary basketball coach from UCLA. Any college basketball fans here? Did you enjoy March Madness? I really, it didn't come out how I wanted, but it was really good. And some of you Villanova fans, you're loving it. But John Wooden, he said this when it comes to that coaching required 7 things. It requires explanation. If you're going to coach somebody, you got to explain what you want. It requires observation. They get to watch somebody else doing what you want them to do. It requires imitation. They've watched it. They've observed. Now they have to imitate and do what you've been teaching them to do. And then it requires repetition, 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 and repetition. 7 things. See, when it comes to being brave, there's nothing like having to be brave. We observe it in the scriptures and life. We get a chance to imitate being brave. We sometimes even fall short. And Jesus' disciples can completely relate to you and I when they've had the opportunity to be brave, and yet they weren't. Mark chapter 4, verse 38 and 40. Imagine this. These are men that are, if they didn't grow up fishing, they definitely grew up around water and were familiar with it. But in Mark chapter 4, 38 to 40, it says Jesus was sleeping in the back of his boat with his head on a cushion during a massive storm. He's sleeping. I've always said That's one of the ways I'm very much like Jesus. I can sleep through things like storms. So during this storm, Jesus is sleeping in the back of the boat with his head on a cushion. The disciples wake him up and they're shouting, "Teacher, don't you care that we're going to drown?" When Jesus woke up, he rebuked the wind and he said to the waves, "Silence, be still." And suddenly the wind stopped and there was a great calm. And then he asked them, "Why are you afraid? Do you still have no faith?" Maybe you felt like that. Maybe there's something repetitive that continues to happen in your life. And when it kind of rears up, maybe it's a person, maybe it's a situation that's just kind of common in your life. But instead of being brave, you find yourself kind of doing this and kind of, and you can relate to these disciples. They say things like, "Teacher, don't you care about us? Don't you care what happens to us?" That's what they said instead of believing God, instead of being brave. Again, have you ever had the opportunity to put your faith to the test and said those words, "God, where are you? Why don't you have this person leave me alone? Why don't you have this situation change? Why can't this be different? Why?" See, the good news is that it's not the end of your faith, and it wasn't certainly for the disciples. They had and would have many more opportunities to be brave. I want to tell you a story. Pastor Petrucci mentioned that I had worked at a Teen Challenge at the training center in Rearsburg for about 5 years before I came down to pastor what was Harvest Assembly then and ultimately became Real Life. And by the way, this coming Father's Day in June, is 13 years ago that I actually came here and Pastor Petrucci shared what he and the board had been talking about in regards to the Middletown Church and that partnership. And 13 years later, the thing I love is that what your partnership has done as a church, you've given more to missions through partnership than even you've given on your own because of your investment in Real Life. And it's really exponentially multiplied the reach and the ability to influence that this church has had. And 13 years ago, I just can't believe how quickly it goes by. My daughter Heidi, who's here tonight, was literally like 3 years old when we got here. And I had all little kids, and it was just kind of crazy to think about it. But being a Teen Challenge, it was funny because I was a youth pastor in Lawrence, Kansas, which is where University of Kansas is, big college town, great place, love that place. And I actually, and this is a long story short, I actually called the Teen Challenge in Pennsylvania because I knew somebody that worked there for my father-in-law. He was retirement age, and as a good son-in-law, I was trying to look out for him and, trying to give him the boot. And so I called and I was his youth pastor. He was the pastor of the church. And I said, "Man, there's got to be something else with a man with this much experience and wisdom. There's got to be something else besides pastoring that he would be able to do in this phase of his life." So I heard about my friend Rich being there, and I called and I said, "Hey, here's a scenario. Here's my father-in-law. What's going on there? Just trying to feel out what's happening." And so he told me a little about, there was this here and there's that opportunity there and all this stuff. And at the end of the conversation, he says to me, "What about you?" And I'm like, "What are you talking about? What about me?" He's like, "Well, have you ever thought about coming here?" I'm like, "No, I'm a youth pastor, man. I don't do that, I wasn't ever a drug addict. I can't relate in those ways. I got nothing to offer." He's like, "Well, just pray about it." And I said, "Okay." Man, he just wrecked me. He just ruined me. Have you ever had somebody ruin you by something they say in that way? He just ruined me. When he said that, I just couldn't get it out of my mind and my heart. And so, long story, we ended up moving to Pennsylvania from Kansas with no experience as a counselor, with no experience in drugs and alcohol, to be a drug and alcohol counselor. Isn't that great? I was like, "Yeah, you fit this perfectly." And so I move over 1,000 miles back here. They told me what my pay was going to be, and I literally, this part wasn't the best thing, I literally laughed out loud. I literally did. I chuckled out loud. And so I moved 1,000 miles, and with no experience and very low pay. And then I get into my office the first day, and my desk is on end. It's not even sitting upright. It's on end. All the cabinets are out. They're scattered around the room. I swear there's like dead animal carcasses around the edges. I mean, I'm like, do you guys even know that I'm coming? Was this like a joke and I'm not supposed to be here? And so I spent my whole first day just like picking up my desk, trying to clean up the office. So I was assuming that somebody would want to meet with me in the office. And then that first 2 days, one of my students, it was like, hey, here's 30 students you're in charge of. And so I have these students, and within the first 2 days, I have to kick a student out of the program. You know, I'm like, I don't even know what in the world I'm doing. I don't even know what's going on. And I'm having to do this. And I can't tell you how afraid I was. Now, that wasn't the only time I've been afraid in life, either before or since then. But I can't tell you how afraid I was. Every day, I would literally come home, and I swear I was in bed by 7:30, 8 o'clock every night. I was so drained, it just literally took everything out of me. And I was just so afraid. But I had to believe God. God, you haven't drugged me out here. This, and this happened, God, in order for me to get here. I have to believe that you are who you say you are, that you're going to do the things that only you can do. I had to be able to, in my life, I had to be able to ask him, and I asked him a lot. Lord, what do I do with this? God, how do I handle that? How do I approach this? What am I doing here? God, I felt like I was asking him nonstop, constantly, asking God. And then the last part is, I just had to experience having to be brave. Maybe you can relate to that. I know you can. And maybe in your life right now, God is calling you to be brave. And I'm praying and believing that as we talk about this, that the Holy Spirit is really going to give you some real insight into that in your life. Maybe it is at work. Maybe there's a conversation that needs to happen and that you need to be brave for. Maybe there's a conversation at home that needs to happen. Maybe there's something that needs to just be faced, or something that needs to be dealt with, or whatever it might be, but you have just sensed that God is calling you to be brave. Maybe it's stepping out. Maybe being brave for you tonight is actually beginning to tithe and give. You know, for somebody else, maybe that's not being brave. That's just normal stuff. But for you, you would say, you know what? This is brave. I've got to do something that I'm afraid of that causes me to pause and delay. Whatever it might be, I'm believing that God is going to help you to be brave as you believe him, as you ask him, and as you allow yourself to experience him.